Hi, I'm Matthew McDonald. I'm with the Knoxville Bar Association's Judicial Committee, and we are here this afternoon with candidate Sarah Keith. And Ms. Keith is running for Division I of the Knox County General Sessions Court. And we have some prepared questions that the Knoxville Bar Association and the Judicial Committee have pre-approved. And we'll be asking those to Ms. Keith today. And at the end of that, we will have reserve 1 minute for any kind of closing statement that you might have. And good afternoon, Ms. Keith. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Good. Absolutely. So if you're ready, we'll get right into it.
Sounds good.
Okay. What makes you qualified to serve?
I've dedicated my life to public service. I have over 15 years experience handling cases of all types at all levels of the courts. I've done everything from traffic offenses all the way up to rape, robbery, murders. I have experience in private practice, having recently just hung a shingle of my own and doing my own law practice. So I have experience and perspective from multiple angles in the court system, which is really beneficial to being an objective judge and an arbiter of the facts of the cases in front of me. In addition to my courtroom experience, I've reviewed innumerable cases, investigatory files, and had to determine whether the correct course of action was to pursue prosecution or was to continue investigation, or if that was a case that needed to be dismissed or not charged. I've also had the opportunity to assist law enforcement for years and on innumerable search warrants for things like searching their homes, their phones, computers, vehicles, all different kinds of search warrants. And in those, we have to balance the importance of public safety with protecting individuals' constitutional rights. And so I have to help them determine whether they have probable cause to do a legal search. And in the course of all of that, I think I've earned a reputation that I've worked hard for from attorneys on both sides of the courtroom and law enforcement, because they know that I'll be thoughtful and honest in my reasoning with them, that I've been fair and objective. And I've also cultivated an environment where I believe that other attorneys and agents are honest and candid with me too, because they know that I plan and will continue to treat them professionally. I have a history of seeing issues and problems and looking for the solutions to those problems. I'm not afraid of hard work. I've had many late nights and weekends at the city county building and on the job, because that's what it takes to be prepared. And I believe that combination of factors would make me an excellent judge.
Thank you. What do you consider to be your greatest strengths and weaknesses?
Strengths, I have a really solid work ethic, and I'm old enough to have a broad experience in the court and with many different types of cases, but I'm also young enough to bring a zeal and a new energy to the bench. I believe I have a judicial temperament. I'm even-keeled, not very high-strung, and so when things get messy, and it's court, they'll get messy. I can just roll with the punches. Things never go as we plan for them, the best laid plans, as they say. And people would probably be surprised to hear that some attorneys have egos. And also you have people in court who are really stressed about being there. All those things combine to make things messy sometimes. I thrive in that chaos. I can accept those different personalities and those competing interests and those stressful situations and be a steady hand in the middle of all that. And that even temper helps control the courtroom and hopefully get a resolution that no matter what perspective you're coming from, you feel like you were treated fairly. As far as weaknesses, in running for this position, I've not been a sessions judge before. So that's a new but familiar place to have a different role in the courtroom than the one that I'm used to. Transitioning from being a participant in the cases to the arbiter, the referee essentially, is a new challenge, but I have the benefit of knowing that I don't know everything. That's something that has served me well throughout my career, knowing that I can learn from other people and have that opportunity, humble enough to recognize my limitations. And so that gives me the chance to, again, take that information and know that it's okay that I didn't know it when I walked in. So that gives me the opportunity to hear from the attorneys and make unbiased, objective opinions and rulings based on that. So I'm really eager for that transition and learning. I'm really up for the challenge on that.
Thank you. What have been the most effective methods for improving court procedures and efficiency in your experience?
I believe, especially if we look at the past couple of years, that regular, honest communication between all the stakeholders has been invaluable. We take plaintiffs, defense, prosecutors, clerk's office, law enforcement, services, social services, everything, and address the issues as they arise and work to mitigate against some foreseeable problems that we can see on the horizon. I think COVID provides a really good example here. The court system, like everything else, really went through some turmoil in 2020, and old solutions didn't work anymore. And so we have all these different stakeholders with competing but important and very valid interest from each side of that. And so we had to come up with new solutions for these very new problems. We have health and safety considerations, constitutional protections, docket backlogs, implementation of new technologies. And everyone had an opinion on that. And again, very important stakes that they had and that they were advocating for. Through those regular meetings and communications, our courts were able to work through what was very tumultuous. And it's one of those situations where so many people, no one got exactly what they wanted in the situations and the solutions that we worked out, but it was something that was workable. And it was something that showed that with that communication, we can adapt to challenges. We can be nimble enough to change when we've tried to implement a solution that didn't work. We can step back and reevaluate and go forward. And as a result of all that, Knox County courts really came out in much better shape than a lot of other jurisdictions as far as, maintaining people's rights and mitigating against horrendous docket backlogs. And a lot of people worked really hard to advocate and express their positions to make sure that all interests were accounted for and make that happen.
What additional improvements would you recommend for the future of our judicial system?
I think staggering dockets may be one way to have a small step that actually can make a very big difference in the daily operations of our courts. Right now, all courts operate generally on the same schedule. If you're not accounting for the occasional rotating staggered docket, where we have jail cases on certain days for the inmates, and only one court can have that feed at the same time. Of course, that may be changing with the new virtual courtrooms with the sheriff's office. But in the meantime, having a regular staggered docket could benefit a lot of people: judges, lawyers, citizens, law enforcement. We could schedule report backs and OTR settings first, and then schedule hearings. It allows courts to handle shorter, simpler matters first and clear some of the people from our crowded courtrooms and then make room for other people to come in. It would also alleviate some of the same people fighting for the same parking spaces downtown, everyone going through the security checkpoints at the same time, and also allow lawyers the opportunity to address the simpler issues first and then have the ability to focus on the more difficult issues later on without having so many irons in the fire simultaneously. And all the lawyers are every day trying to cover multiple courts simultaneously. As long as courts are open every day, there's no way to prevent that completely. But a formal staggering could at least help alleviate some of that chaos and make it easier to prioritize the docketing for everyone. Informal staggering happens, but you have everyone again sessioned or subpoenaed for sessions hearings and regular court hearings or criminal court hearings at the same time. So even if we were doing something as simple as issuing subpoenas at 10 or 10:30 for sessions hearings, that could be something that would help people plan better and perhaps keep civilians, officers, people who are trying to go back to work from sitting additional hours in the courtroom until their case is called. If we could just stagger a little bit to just to help maintain the docket flow.
What is the biggest challenge you see facing the court?
I think if we look right now, we can look at that in a couple of different ways. We could have the legal challenges facing the court, and we also have structural challenges facing the court. If I look, first of all, let's take the first prong there, legal. I think the issue of the day there really is bonds. And of course, that was something that the courts were looking toward addressing and were brainstorming ideas and trying to get metrics to handle those things consistently. COVID came along and that really accelerated the need, where we were looking at reducing the number of people who are held in custody to protect those individuals and to protect law enforcement, to protect everyone who was in the court from spreading. And so that's something that really accelerated and became a super issue for us. Now, of course, nobody wants poor people held in custody just because they're poor. And of course, we also want to protect the public from anyone who might be dangerous. So the current state of the law gives valid arguments for each of those positions for people who want their client to be released from custody, and the state who may want that person held. Ultimately, the state of the law right now, we may need a constitutional amendment, a state constitutional amendment, to tell us, resolve some of those disputes on what are valid arguments from each side about the case of our statute and where our case law is. In the meantime, I think we have to look at each case and the factors that are articulated in the statutes, how higher courts have told us to interpret those, and from there, apply the law as best we can to each set of circumstances as they are in front of us, and not from whatever pressure is being applied, but again, from the facts and the law as best we can. Fairness and consistency, so litigants generally know what to expect and can accurately advise their clients and parties what they can expect from the court. It's really important to maintain that so that people can operate efficiently and fairly. Structurally, I think we can look at two things that are on the horizon and require immediate attention. First of all, mental health. We can't really address justice until we better address mental health. And I think Sessions Court's a great opportunity to provide interventions to people early on and set them on a better track who are maybe falling through the cracks right now. I'd be really excited if I were on the bench to pursue grant opportunities and coordination with multidisciplinary agencies and teams to better address some of those underserved communities. Second, I think we have growth versus resources. Our population's growing, our dockets are therefore going to grow. And with that, we need more staffing, we need more facilities, we need more resources, more everything, and all of that takes money. Of course, having said that, we have to be good stewards of the resources and the money that we have today and work with that as it comes. So to that end, I'd work alongside and in coordination with my fellow judges, and on days when dockets are heavy and backlogged, if my docket's concluded, I'd ask that cases be transferred into my court so that I could assist them in efficiently handling their dockets. I think it's important that if people are there and ready to address their case, that we don't have to reset it. We can go through those cases as a team approach when it serves the interest of justice to handle that case that day. To that extent, I think that when we apply this team approach, and it's something that I've certainly seen the Sessions judges do, and I would continue to do, and as I've appreciated it as a participant in the court system, I think it's a great way to ensure that the courts are properly serving the public.
And Ms. Keith, who are your judicial role models and why?
I think a lot of people would look at this and think of Supreme Court justices, and there are certainly many brilliant jurists to choose from in our nation's history. Nevertheless, if I'm thinking about what kind of judge I want to emulate, they're the people who are affecting people day to day, in the trenches, as it were, in our local courts. And I think of two of our local retired judges, Bobby McGee and Mary Beth Leibowitz. I was lucky enough to practice in both of their courts very early on in my career, my baby lawyer days, and I got to see how they operated. Their even-handedness, their judicial temperament, deliberativeness, and how they operated, the deliberate way they weigh all their decisions, and maybe most importantly, the inherent decency that they both had when dealing people from all walks of life. They both impressed upon me the importance of respect and hard work and decency. I won and lost cases in front of both of them, but even on days I lost, I knew I had a fair shake when I walked in. They were fair to everybody and they were consistent with everybody. You knew what you were going to get with each of them. And again, it didn't matter rich, poor. I highest price lawyer there with years of experience or a very young baby lawyer who was trying to fake it until she made it, walking in. They were respectful and fair to everybody. And that's the kind of legacy I want to leave. I mean, that's big shoes to fill for anybody, but they really impressed upon me what a judge should be like.
Thank you very much for that. And that concludes our questions. And now we've reserved 1 minute for you to give any type of closing remark you would like to give. You can begin whenever you're ready.
Thank you. I'm running for judge in Knox County because Knox County deserves public servants who respect the law, the courts, and their fellow citizens. Everyone who enters the courtroom believes that their case is the most important case on the docket that day, and they each deserve to have their case handled professionally and efficiently. For the system to work its best, the participants have to respect the system. If they lose their case, but they feel like they were treated fairly, they can walk away still believing that the system works. I believe the judge's role is to maintain the dignity of the court. I've had worked cases from the beginning all the way through the conclusion of case, through jury trial, through post-conviction relief. Having done that, I have seen how important what Sessions Court is to the process of these cases. I've had to make difficult decisions in my career, particularly when I think about working with vehicular homicide cases or child abuse cases. There were cases sometimes that were extremely difficult to decide what to do. And there were some that I knew were going to be a challenge to take to trial, but I believed that the ends of justice were served by pursuing those difficult cases as zealously and ethically as I could to take those to trial. There were other times when, reviewing all the information I had, I determined that it was more appropriate to dismiss those cases or not to pursue charges at all. And there were situations where people on both sides were yelling at me, name calling, or I'm sitting across a table from somebody who's heartbroken and crying, who desperately wants a different outcome to that. But ultimately, those decisions were made because I had to look at the facts in front of me and how the law applied to those facts, and not how I wanted it to be, not how I could change it, but the facts as they were and the law as it applied, and decide what serves the ends of justice in these particular circumstances. And I made those decisions even when it was difficult. And that's the kind of perspective and mindset that I would bring to the bench of Knox County. I have the right experience, I have the right temperament, and I have the passion for the law and for justice. And I'm looking forward to serving as your next Knox County Sessions Judge. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is Sarah Keith, and Ms. Keith is running for Division I of the Knox County General Sessions Court. And on behalf of the Knoxville Bar Association's Judicial Committee, I appreciate your participation. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.